UConn basketball at a crossroads. Next. Welcome to the Stan Simpson Show, a program about Connecticut people and compelling issues. Make it a point to drop it every week. There are strikingly contrasting storylines in this year's women's and men's basketball programs at UConn. While the women are on course for yet another undefeated championship season, the men's team is in disarray, struggling to regain their identity and dominance. While the future for the women looks exceedingly bright, storm clouds are approaching for the men. We'll talk about the state of basketball at State U with WTIC News Talk 1080 Sports Director Scott Gray. Then we'll wrap things up with a guy who can influence your electricity bill. Jeff Butler, President and COO of Connecticut Light and Power, joins us to talk about new energy-saving programs that affect you. But first, a tale of two teams. Camera caught me doing a little stand-up. They like that. You were laughing.
I watched you do the whole thing before you went on camera. It was pretty entertaining, Stan.
We'll edit that out sometime, right? So, listen, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you here. Tale of two teams. You have strikingly different stories. The women, 72 wins and counting, right? Going for their 7th national championship.
Yep.
Let's talk about last week. They win the Big East championship at a arena, XL Center, that's not sold out. Had they spoiled the Connecticut masses with their success?
You know, I think that is a little bit of a cause for concern, the fact that they haven't been selling out the XL Center, or at least putting in more than 10, 11,000 per game. And I know there's some concern in Hartford about where do we go from here. The contract with the Big East for the tournament runs through next season. The Big East is kind of holding back on renewing the contract or extending the contract. And there is some talk about moving the tournament out of Hartford. Some of the officials in the Big East and some of the coaches favor the idea of maybe going to a destination spot, like maybe Tampa, Florida, home of the South Florida Bulls, or so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think that Hartford, the XL Center, Hartford, the market in general, even the state of Connecticut, has got to get on board and kind of make this a destination spot. It is a hotbed of women's basketball, no question about it. You've got the best team in the country, and I think they've got to make it a destination spot. I think everybody.
What do you have to do?
Well, I think everybody in the market's got to get on board on this. I think everybody has to get involved. I think that, for instance, they could probably get the Rentschler Field into the mix. Maybe put on some kind of a reception for the Big East officials at the big ballroom at Rentschler Field. It's a beautiful location. And bring in state officials. I mean, the governor should be there. John Larson, the first district congressman, it's his district. And right now he's the 5th most powerful man in Congress. He has some influence. Have people like that, senators, have them involved, get everybody involved, and maybe even bring the convention center into play. Put on some kind of special event for all the players. Bring everybody in a night before, a day before, and a day early. Put something on for the players, Put on some kind of shows for them.
But the shop owners, the restaurateurs are saying, listen, they're not showing up. Even with 10,000 people, they're not seeing the buzz. So even with the people who are coming, they're not patronizing.
But I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure the shop owners get involved enough. I think they should make themselves part of this package to increase their own visibility around the Big East tournament. I think there are a number of things that you can do, but you've got to get a lot of people involved. I'll tell you what, like this particular March, the weather's so beautiful. If they just brought one of the river boats up the river and put on a brunch on one of the boats, no
question they're disappointed. Yeah. The organizers, even though the numbers were okay, they expected more here, particularly with the history being made.
I think you've got to make it more of an event. You've got to make it not necessarily for the people who come to town, but for the teams, for the league officials, for the players who come to town.
This team, let's talk about this particular team. They're set to make history again. Again, they spoiled the masses. How would you compare this particular team with past UConn dynasties?
You know, okay, I'm going to give myself a little plug here. My new job. I'm a columnist for the Valley Press.
All right.
My daughter's editor for the Valley Press, and one of the first jobs she took on was talking her old man into going to work for her.
You can't cheat, right?
Right. The Valley Press covers all the towns in the Farmington Valley, and my column that will be coming out this week is going to deal a little bit with Gino Auriemma from a different perspective, looking at his program, maybe the way he might have looked at other programs that were dominant. People have got to remember, UConn is not the only dominant program in the country. It is right now, but dominance runs in cycles. And I think when people read my column, they're going to be a little surprised to see the team that, you know, like I was looking at the players for West Virginia during the award ceremony at the Big East tournament, and they sit there and they look at UConn with awe when this is going on. And not every winning team gets that look of awe, but UConn does.
Let me stop you right there. Okay. This look of awe. I watched the team a couple times, took my daughter to the game last week. I think this team is a beatable team. As good as they are, I think you have Maya Moore and Tina Charles, outstanding players. If you lose one of those players, no one there scares you. I think what they have going for them, they play very well together, and they have a certain intimidation when they go out there. You mentioned that sense of awe. When they go on the court, teams sort of, you can hear the hearts palpitating. What about that? Are they as scary as teams in the past?
You know what? Gino says that this year's team is not his best team.
Right.
He said if you took Diana's team that won the second national champion, or that extended the streak the second year, the original record streak, he thought that team would beat this year's team.
I do too.
But you know, what's interesting is when they looked beatable in the Big East tournament. But then you're playing against teams that have a number of opportunities throughout the season to scout you. And they play against you. They get their own book on you. And some of these teams you're playing a third time in the tournament. I even asked Gino after the win over Notre Dame, where they really did struggle to keep, to get that to a double-digit win. I said, every year when you're undefeated going into the NCAA tournament, every time that happens, the question always comes up, wouldn't you feel better if you had lost a game, got that monkey off your back before you go into the NCAA tournament? And the point I made with him was, maybe this game was that down game.
That wake-up call. So you think they will waltz? You think they'll waltz to a championship? Do you think this is a no-brainer?
I think they go to a championship because now...
Even with Tennessee on the horizon having a decent team,
even with Tennessee on the horizon, even with Stanford on the horizon, though Stanford is one of those teams that's had a look at them, been able to get their own book against them, but they aren't playing against teams now that are as familiar with them as the Big East teams are. Now, every game they play, they may run up against a Big East team somewhere down the line, and maybe it'll be Notre Dame. Maybe it'll be somebody they're facing for a fourth time this season. That could happen. But for the most part, they're going to be up against teams that don't play against them regularly. A
tale of two teams. UConn women on the rise, UConn men on the downfall.
Yeah.
Your quick thoughts, 17-15 overall. A lot of questions about what's happening internally, externally with the coach. Your thoughts on what has been, a very disappointing season?
I'm watching the game against St. John's that was maybe the most dismal game of the Jim Calhoun era.
First round of the Big East tournament.
The Big East tournament. And at halftime, one of the commentators in the ESPN studio said, everybody's looking for what happened to UConn, why this, why that. Maybe the big thing that we're missing is maybe they just aren't that good. And everybody in the studio kind of, UConn not that good? I think the guy's onto something.
Well,
maybe they just aren't that good.
How about this? We talked about the fans being spoiled. Here you have the women's team where they can't draw, and they're going to win 72 games in a row, 2 championships back-to-back. The men's team, people forget, they're in the Final Four last year. Right? Let's not forget, this same team, same program, was in the Final Four last year, so they're rebuilding. Are we being too harsh on this situation that simply North Carolina won the championship, and they're, 17-15 also, I think.
Well, Gino has been talking a lot as this streak kept building up to a new record. He kept talking about how fragile things are, how quickly you mentioned an injury, boom, what happens? What happened if Diana Taurasi had ever gotten injured during that last streak? What happened if Tina Charles or Maya Moore got injured during this streak? Very fragile. But nothing demonstrates more how fragile it really is than a team like the University of Connecticut that brings back 3 starters, 3 seniors from last year's team, really didn't lose a lot. I mean, they lost Hashim Thabit, but he's been struggling just to maintain himself in the NBA, and they go to the Final Four, and this year they don't even go to the NCAA tournament.
But a lot of people before the season didn't think this team would do all that well. They were kind of put into the middle of the pack.
I really thought when the initial polls came out and all the polls had them in the top 20, AP had them at 13, I really thought they were very, very overrated. I wouldn't have put them in the top 25 to start the season. I thought they were a team that had to prove themselves.
All right, we're going to prove ourselves in the second segment. When we come back, we'll talk more about a tale of 2 teams, UConn basketball. What's going on with the men? You are watching the Stan Simpson Show in full HD.
Gamble, Dyson, the kick.